It was supposed to be just another ordinary afternoon, until a trembling voice called the most feared man in the city. "Sir, your son, he fell on the street, and he can't get up." And in that single moment, the world of a ruthless mafia boss collided with the heart of a poor girl who had nothing to lose. It was an ordinary day, the kind of day where the sun feels too bright, and the world moves too fast to notice a single quiet soul walking through it. On the cracked streets of Naples, a poor girl named Layla carried a small wicker basket filled with half-wilted flowers. Her hair was tied back with a faded ribbon. Her sandals were torn. Yet, her eyes, they carried the kind of hope only the poor dare to hold on to. She whispered softly to herself as she crossed the road. Layla under her breath. "If I sell just 5 more today, maybe Mama can eat tonight." Her stomach growled, but she smiled anyway. Because when you're used to hunger, you learn to smile through it. The afternoon heat shimmered off the asphalt. Around her, cars blared horns, street vendors shouted, children laughed. The city was alive, loud, careless, unstoppable. And then, everything stopped. A boy's cry pierced the air, brief, broken, followed by the clatter of something metallic rolling across the street. Layla turned sharply. Across the intersection, a small boy in a school uniform lay sprawled on the ground, his backpack open, books scattered, his hand trembling weakly. People passed by, glancing for a moment, then walking on. No one stopped. Layla dropped her basket. The flowers scattered over the hot pavement. Without thinking, she ran, Layla shouting, "Hey, someone help him. Please, someone." But no one came. She knelt beside him, her heart hammering in her chest. The boy's breathing was shallow. His small chest rose unevenly. A bruise darkened near his temple. His lips moved, but no sound came. Layla softly, shaking him. "Hey, hey, little one, can you hear me?" "What happened?" The boy's eyes fluttered open for a second, dark eyes, filled with pain. He tried to speak, but only one word came out. Boy weak whisper, "Papa." Then his eyes rolled back, and his body went still. A deep, echoing heartbeat sound fills the silence. Layla froze, fear washing over her. She looked around desperately. People stood far away, watching, whispering, but no one stepped forward. Layla panicked. "Please, somebody call an ambulance." No one moved. A man muttered, "That's the De Luca boy," and turned away quickly, dragging his wife along. Another whispered, "Don't get involved. Not with his family." Layla didn't understand, not yet. All she knew was that a child was hurt, and the world was watching like it didn't matter. She searched his pockets, her hands trembling. No wallet, no ID. Then she saw a cracked smartphone lying beside him. The screen was half shattered, but still lit. A single contact glowed at the top of the screen. "Boss!" Layla hesitated. Her throat went dry. Who was Boss? Was it his father? His employer? Someone dangerous? Her hand shook as she stared at the name. The boy's breathing was growing weaker. Time was slipping away. She bit her lip hard, whispered a prayer. Layla whispering, "Please don't kill me if you're dangerous, I just want to help." And then she pressed call. Phone dialing tone, 3 slow rings. Then a deep, cold male voice cuts through. Voice sharp, commanding. "Who is this?" Layla's heart nearly stopped. The voice was calm. Too calm, like someone who'd learned to hide anger beneath control. Layla stammering. "Yes, sir, I found a boy. I think he's your son. He fell on the street. He's not moving." Silence. A silence so heavy it made her chest ache. Then the voice returned, lower, dangerous, trembling with something between fury and fear. Voice. "Where are you?" She quickly gave the street name, her words tripping over each other. Before she could finish, she heard a sharp sound, the roar of an engine starting. Voice urgent. "Stay with him. Don't move. If anyone touches him, stop them. I'm coming." The call ended. Layla looked down at the boy. His small hand twitched. She gently placed his head on her lap, brushing the dust from his hair. Layla softly, almost to herself, Who are you, little one? And why is everyone afraid to help you? Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Every sound, every car horn, every distant shout made her flinch. She didn't know who she had just called. Only that his voice didn't belong to an ordinary father. The crowd scattered instantly. People ducked into shops, doors slammed shut. The air filled with tension, heavy, electric. Layla's eyes widened. The cars rolled to a stop in front of her. The doors opened, and men in dark suits stepped out, moving with precision. Their eyes scanned everything, like soldiers ready for war. And then, the last door opened. A tall man in a black tailored suit stepped out. Broad shoulders, sharp eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, a scar cutting across his jaw. His very presence silenced the street. Layla whispering to herself, "Oh God, what have I done?" He walked toward her, each step measured, deliberate. The crowd dared not breathe. When he finally removed his sunglasses, his eyes were not what she expected. They weren't cold. They were terrified. "Man-horse, where is he?" Layla pointed wordlessly to the boy lying beside her. The man, Marco Di Luca, dropped to his knees, gathering his son in his arms. His gloved hand trembled against the boy's cheek. Marco soft, breaking. "Luca, Luca, open your eyes." The boy didn't move. Marco's face hardened, his fear turning into fury. He stood up abruptly, glaring at Layla. Marco voice low, dangerous. "What happened here?" Layla panicked. I don't know. I just saw him fall. I tried to help." "Marco, you expect me to believe that?" His men instantly raised their guns. Layla gasped, backing away, tears filling her eyes. "Layla, please, I didn't hurt him. I swear on my mother's life." Marco studied her, her trembling hands, her torn sandals, her eyes red with fear but honest. Something in her voice, that desperation, made him hesitate. A tense beat. Wind blows across the silent street. Then, faintly, Luca groaned. Marco dropped beside him again, lifting his son's head. Marco urgent. "Luca, it's Papa. Look at me." The boy's eyelids fluttered. He whispered, barely audible, "Luca, Papa." "Someone pushed me." Marco froze. Marco low. "What did you say?" But before the boy could speak again, he slipped back into unconsciousness. The father's expression turned from confusion to controlled rage. He turned toward his men. "Marco, get the car." "No!" Two bodyguards lifted the boy carefully. Marco's jaw tightened as he looked back at Layla. Marco coldly. "You're coming with us." Layla shocked. What?" "No." "I didn't do anything." "Marco, then you've got nothing to fear." He motioned sharply, and before she could resist, one of the guards grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the car. Layla crying out, "Please, I swear I just wanted to help him." Marco without turning. "We'll see." Car doors slam, engines roar. As the convoy pulled away, Layla glanced back through the rear window. Her flower basket lay crushed on the road, petals scattered in the wind. The world she knew was gone. And somewhere deep in her chest, an unfamiliar dread began to bloom. In one heartbeat, the life of a poor flower girl was tied to the most feared name in the city. She didn't know it yet, but that call she made had just opened the gates to a storm that could burn everything in its path, fade to silence. Then the faint echo of sirens in the distance. And as those sirens grew closer, Layla realized she hadn't asked the most important question of all. What happens to people who call the Mafia boss and survive? The streets blurred past in streaks of light and shadow. Layla sat in the back seat of the black car, pressed between two stone-faced men in suits. Her wrists shook, her palms clammy, her eyes wide as the city disappeared behind tinted glass. Every few seconds, she glanced toward the front seat, where Marco Di Luca sat in silence, his powerful frame rigid, one hand clutching his phone, the other trembling near his son's small, lifeless hand. The air was thick with fear. Not the kind that made you scream, but the kind that made you too scared to even breathe. Music swelled softly, Low piano, tense strings. Layla's voice finally broke the silence. Layla hesitant, trembling. "Yes, sir. Please, I didn't hurt him. I swear. I just found him there. I thought." Marco's voice cut through her words like a blade. Marco cold, without looking back. "Be quiet." She froze. That voice. It carried the weight of command, of danger, of something darker. She pressed her back into the seat, eyes fixed on the unconscious boy's reflection in the window. His small fingers twitched against his father's palm, and for a moment she saw something human in Marco's reflection. A flicker of fear behind the rage. Engine slows, then stops. Doors open. The sound of hurried footsteps, echoing marble floors. They had arrived at a grand, gated mansion on the outskirts of the city, tall iron fences, white pillars, and armed men stationed at every corner. The car door opened, and before Layla could even move, one of the guards yanked her out. "Guard gruff. Move." She stumbled, barefoot on cold stone. Her torn sandal snapped. She caught a glimpse of Marco carrying his son through massive double doors, shouting for the doctor. Inside, the house was a world she had never imagined. Crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, gold frames on the walls. But it didn't feel warm. It felt like a palace built on fear. Layla was pushed into a corner of the grand hall. She stood there, shivering, clutching her torn skirt, as doctors rushed past her into a room. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them, and for the first time, she was left alone with her thoughts and her terror. Sound of faint heart monitor beeping behind closed doors. She whispered to herself, Layla whispering, "What have I done? What kind of man did I call?" Minutes crawled by. Every sound, the ticking clock, the echo of footsteps outside, felt like thunder. Then the door creaked open. Marco walked out. His black suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, a streak of blood on his hand, his son's blood. He stopped in front of her. His face was carved in stone. "Marco Lowe, tell me, what exactly happened on that street?" Layla swallowed hard. Her voice came out weak. "Layla, I was selling flowers. I saw him fall. He hit the ground and didn't move. I ran to help, I swear. That's all I know." "Marco, did anyone touch him before you?" "Layla, and no. People just." They looked and walked away. Marco's jaw tightened. His eyes searched hers like a knife searching for truth. "Marco, you expect me to believe that?" Layla pleading. "Yes. I called you, didn't I? If I wanted to hurt him, I wouldn't have done that." Her voice cracked. Tears rolled down her dirt-streaked face. Something in her words hit him. Not her tone, but her honesty. He stared for a moment longer, then turned away. "Marco Gruff, if you're lying, girl, no one in this city will ever find your body." Layla whispering. "Then I guess I'll just pray you believe me." Silence. The camera lingers on Marco's expression, controlled fury softening, just slightly. The doctor emerged. "Dr. M.R. DeLuca, your son's stable, but he wasn't just hurt. There's something else. We need to run more tests." Marco's voice trembled, almost breaking. "Marco, tell me straight." "Doctor, there's a mark on his neck. A puncture, possibly from a syringe." Marco froze. The room went still. "Marco Lowe, a syringe?" "Doctor, yes. Someone might have injected him with something before he fell." Layla's eyes widened. "Layla, no, no, he just fell." Marco turned sharply to her, his voice rising for the first time. "Marco, you expect me to believe he just fell with a needle in his neck?" Layla crying. "I don't know. I didn't see anyone. I swear on my mother's life, I didn't." She dropped to her knees, sobbing. Her voice broke through even the guards' hardened faces. Music softens, emotional piano under trembling strings. Marco stared at her, this fragile girl shaking before him, crying not for herself, but because she was terrified of what he might do. Something inside him shifted. Maybe it was her innocence. Maybe it was because his son's life was hanging by a thread, and she was the only one who'd cared enough to help. He turned away, running a hand through his hair, breathing heavily. Marco quietly. Get her water. And someone clean her up. The guards hesitated. Marco sharply. Now! They moved immediately. Layla stared, confused. Layla softly. Why? Why are you helping me now? Marco without looking back. Because you're still talking. If you were guilty, you'd be begging for your life. Brief pause. Clock ticks. Tension hums beneath quiet dialogue. As Layla sipped water with trembling hands, she looked at Marco again. He stood by the glass window, looking down at his unconscious son in the next room. His reflection glowed faintly in the glass, a man carved by grief and violence. Layla softly. You love him a lot. Marco, he's all I have left. His voice was barely a whisper. For the first time, Layla saw more than the cold exterior, the rage, the control, the power. She saw a father, a man who'd built an empire of fear, yet couldn't stop one small child from falling. Music swells, slow, heavy notes. Marco turned to her. Marco, tell me again, slowly, everything you saw. Layla took a deep breath. Layla, I was standing near the flower stall. He was walking fast, like someone was following him. He looked scared. Then he stumbled and fell. I didn't see anyone touch him. Marco, did you see any car nearby? Layla, there was a black van parked across the road. But I didn't think. Marco's eyes narrowed. Marco, a van? He grabbed his phone. Marco to his men. Check traffic cams near Veroma. Look for a black van. License plate partials, anything. He hung up, turning back to her. Marco, you said he looked scared. Like someone was following him? Layla, yes. He kept looking back. Marco's hands clenched into fists. His voice lowered, dangerous and calm again. Marco, then this wasn't an accident. He paced the marble floor slowly, thinking. His son had been targeted. Someone dared to touch a De Luca. And somehow, this girl had stumbled into it. He turned suddenly, stepping closer to her. Marco quietly. What's your name? Layla. Layla. Marco. Layla what? Layla. Layla Romano. He studied her face. Marco, do you have family? Layla. My mother. She's sick. I take care of her. Marco's eyes softened for a moment. Then he looked away. Marco quietly. You'll stay here tonight. Layla shocked. What? No. Please, I have to go home, my mother. Marco firm. If someone targeted my son, they might target you next. You called me. That makes you a witness. Layla's breath hitched. Layla, a witness? But I don't even know what happened. Marco. Exactly. That's what worries me. Layla felt trapped. Inside this mansion, surrounded by armed men, next to a man feared by everyone in the city. And yet, part of her felt something strange. Safety? No, not exactly. It was the sense that fate had locked her into something bigger than herself. She glanced once more through the glass door, at the small boy lying unconscious under white sheets. For Layla, it was the night she should have gone home. But fate had other plans. As the storm clouds gathered above the De Luca mansion, neither she nor Marco knew that the same van she had mentioned had already stopped at the edge of the property. Two silhouettes stepped out in the rain, whispering into a phone. Voice muffled. The girl's inside. He doesn't know yet. And just like that, the fall on the street was no longer an accident. It was only the beginning. The steady beep. Beep. Beep of the heart monitor echoed softly in the room, too calm, too fragile for the chaos outside. Luca, the mafia boss's only son, lay pale and motionless under the white hospital lights. A thick bandage wrapped around his shoulder, spotted with red that refused to stay hidden. The poor girl, Maria, stood near the window, her trembling hands still stained with dried blood. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic. And fear. Antonio Moretti, the mafia boss himself, stood like a storm in silence. His black suit was untouched, but his eyes were burning. He turned slowly toward Maria. His deep voice broke the stillness. Antonio, coldly tell me again how this happened. Every detail. Maria's throat tightened. She had already told him twice, but something in his tone made her voice falter. Maria, I, I saw him on the street. He just fell. There was blood. I called you. Antonio, interrupting. Sharp, you called me before the ambulance. She looked down, her heart hammered. Maria, because I found something strange. Antonio's brows furrowed. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over her small one. Antonio, strange? What did you find? Maria reached for the small cloth bag she'd kept hidden beside her chair. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside lay a small silver bullet, its surface marked with faint etchings, initials carved roughly into the metal. She whispered, Maria, this was inside the wound. Antonio froze. His eyes darkened. Slowly, he reached out and took the bullet between his fingers. His gaze flicked from the object to her, studying her face, her tone, her fear. Antonio, you pulled this out yourself? Maria, nodding. The doctors were slow. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. He clenched his jaw, the veins on his temple tightening. Antonio, those letters. MS. Do you know what they mean? Maria shook her head. Maria, no. But when I touched it, he whispered something. Antonio's gaze sharpened like a blade. Antonio, what did he say? Maria hesitated. The words echoed in her mind, still heavy with fear. Maria, he said, she found me. Silence heavy, electric. Antonio took a step back, his expression unreadable now. His hand brushed over his chin, as if trying to steady a storm inside him. Then, he looked at her again. Antonio, you're sure? Those were his words? Maria, whispering yes. A low growl escaped his throat, the sound of a man who had just confirmed his worst fear. Antonio, to himself, I told them she was gone. I told them we buried that ghost years ago. Maria's confusion grew. Maria, sir, who is she? Antonio looked up sharply, eyes filled with a haunted rage. Antonio, someone who shouldn't exist anymore. Someone who once tried to destroy everything I built, including my family. Maria took a cautious step forward. Maria, you mean someone from your past? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward Luca's bed, his fingers brushing lightly over his son's cold hand. Antonio, softly, my enemies don't miss twice. If that bullet was meant for him, they're sending a message. Maria watched him closely, this man who terrified everyone else in the city, now standing utterly powerless beside his only child. Her voice came out softer this time. Maria, I can help if you'll let me. Antonio's head tilted slightly, almost in disbelief. Antonio, you? You're a girl who lives in the shadows of broken buildings. What could you possibly do? Her eyes hardened, tears glistening but defiance rising. Maria, I live where people like your enemies hide. They forget I exist. That's why I can see things you can't. A flicker of interest crossed his face. For a moment, just a moment, the mafia boss didn't see a poor girl. He saw a survivor. Before he could answer, the hospital door creaked open. A doctor stepped in, pale-faced. Doctor, Mr. Moretti, we need to talk. It's about your son's wound. Antonio straightened immediately, tension filling the air. Antonio, speak. The doctor hesitated, glancing briefly at Maria as if unsure whether to continue. Antonio, low, warning she stays. The doctor swallowed hard. Doctor, the bullet wasn't just a normal one. There was something coated on it. A toxin, slow, deliberate. It's rare. We've never seen it in this city before. Antonio's face turned to stone. Antonio, a toxin? The doctor nodded nervously. Doctor, yes. We're doing our best, but we don't know the exact antidote. Whoever made it knew what they were doing. Antonio looked back at his son, the boy's breathing now slightly uneven. A sound escaped him, low, sharp, almost a growl. Antonio, muttering poison. That's her signature. Maria looked at him, eyes wide. Maria? Whose? He turned sharply toward her, his expression colder than before. Antonio, you've seen too much already. Maria didn't flinch. Maria, then maybe I deserve to know. Antonio stared at her for a long moment, then finally spoke. Antonio, her name was Serena Valenti. Once, she was my closest ally, my fiancée. Then she disappeared the night my wife died. Maria gasped softly. Maria, you think? She's back. He nodded slowly. Antonio, and if she's back, she wants revenge. The room fell silent again. Outside, daylight began to fade slightly through the hospital window, shadows stretching long and cold. Then, Luca stirred. A faint groan escaped his lips. Both turned instantly. Luca, weakly father. Antonio rushed to him, gripping his hand. Antonio, I'm here. Son, stay still. You're safe. Luca's eyes fluttered open just enough to meet his father's, then drifted toward Maria. Luca, hoarse whisper the girl. She saved me. Maria froze, her throat tightening. Antonio, softly I know. Rest now. But Luca shook his head weakly. Luca, no. She's in danger too. Antonio's brows furrowed. Antonio, what are you saying? Luca's lips trembled. Luca, they followed me. Because of her. Maria's blood ran cold. Maria, stammering me? I don't even know them. But Luca's voice faded, his head falling back onto the pillow. The monitor beeped faster for a moment, then steadied. Antonio turned toward Maria, suspicion flickering like lightning in his eyes. Antonio, why would they follow you? Maria stepped back, shaking her head. Maria, I don't know. I swear I don't. Antonio moved closer, his presence overwhelming, his voice like thunder. Antonio, don't lie to me. I've buried men for less. Her eyes filled with tears, but she held his gaze. Maria, I'm not lying. I didn't even know your son until today. For a long, tense moment, neither spoke. The air was heavy enough to choke on. Then, Antonio suddenly looked down at the bullet still in his hand. The initials MS caught the light again. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself. Antonio, MS not Serena Valenti. Then who? The realization hit him mid-sentence. His eyes widened slightly, shock, recognition, and fear flashing all at once. But before he could say another word, the hospital lights flickered. Twice. Then, total darkness. A child's monitor flatlined. The window shattered, and a shadow moved across the room. Antonio spun around, drawing his gun, but the silhouette was gone before he could aim. Maria's scream broke through the chaos. Maria, they're here. Antonio's jaw tightened. His voice turned to steel. Antonio, stay behind me. Whoever they are, they made the biggest mistake of their lives. The camera would slowly pan out, the heart monitor glowing faintly red in the dark, the bullet rolling off the table and landing near Luca's hand. And in the faint flicker of emergency light, we see a mark scratched into the hospital wall. MS. A silent message. A warning. And the beginning of something much darker. Rain poured heavily over the city, fast, cold, relentless. It washed the blood off the hospital floor, off the cracked glass, off the trembling hands of those who'd just seen death step briefly into the room and leave a warning behind. Antonio Moretti stood in that storm, outside, in the parking lot, his black suit soaked, his eyes staring into nothing. The flashing red lights of the ambulance danced across his face like lightning on stone. Inside his chest, rage battled fear. He had always known what it cost to be merciful in his world, weakness. But tonight, mercy had cost him something far worse. Behind him, Maria stood under a flickering lamp, shivering in her torn sweater. She didn't dare speak. The night had taken away even her courage to breathe loudly. When Antonio finally turned, his voice was deep, calm, the kind of calm that hides a storm. Antonio. He's alive. Barely. But whoever came tonight didn't come to kill him. Maria blinked through the rain. Maria, what do you mean? Antonio's eyes narrowed. Antonio, they came to deliver a message, and they used you to get close enough to him. Her heart dropped. Maria, me? But I swear, I didn't know anyone. He took a step closer, his stare cutting through her words. Antonio, everyone says that. Right before the truth comes out. Maria's voice cracked. Maria, I saved your son. I didn't hurt him. Antonio's jaw tightened. For a moment, his mask broke. His voice grew rough, almost human. Antonio, you don't understand. In my world, saving someone sometimes costs more than killing them. The rain fell harder, drumming against metal and asphalt. He looked at her one last time, then motioned to two of his men standing by the cars. Antonio, take her. Maria froze. Maria, what? No, please. Where? Antonio, somewhere safe. For now. But his tone told her safe didn't mean free. An hour later, Maria sat in a dimly lit warehouse, her wrists loosely tied, her hair damp, her eyes red from crying. The air smelled of gun oil and old secrets. Antonio entered quietly. His presence filled the room before his footsteps did. He placed a small folder on the table in front of her. Antonio, I had my men look into you. Maria Russo, 21. No parents. No record. Worked at a bakery that burned down last month. You live near Via Lorenzo, the same street my son was attacked on. She swallowed hard. Maria. Yes. I told you. Antonio, cutting in that bakery. Wasn't an accident. Her eyes widened. Maria, what are you talking about? He leaned forward slightly, his tone low and dangerous. Antonio, it was a message to me. The same people who shot my son burned your workplace. They knew you'd have nowhere to go. They made sure of it. Maria's voice trembled. Maria, why? Why would they do that to me? Antonio's silence was heavier than words. Finally, he said, Antonio, because you were born in the wrong place. To the wrong name. She frowned, confused. Maria, what do you mean? He slid the folder closer. Inside, a black and white photo. A woman with cold eyes and a cruel smile. Serena Valenti. Antonio, do you recognize her? Maria looked at it and froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. Maria, that's my mother. Antonio didn't move. Antonio. Then everything makes sense. The room seemed to shrink. Her pulse roared in her ears. Maria, my mother. She died when I was a baby. Antonio's voice was calm, almost cruel. Antonio. No. She disappeared. And now, she's back. Tears filled Maria's eyes as her voice broke. Maria, you're lying. Antonio slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like thunder. Antonio, I wish I was. He leaned closer, his voice low, filled with restrained fury. Antonio, the bullet that hit my son carried her mark. The toxin, her creation. And now I know how she got close enough to him. Through you. Maria shook her head violently. Maria. No, I didn't even know she was alive. Antonio stared at her for a long time, his face unreadable. Then, he whispered something that made her blood run cold. Antonio, blood doesn't ask for permission, Maria. It always finds its way home. She looked at him, horrified. Maria, you think I helped her? He didn't answer. He simply turned, pacing slowly toward the window. Outside, the rain had slowed, but thunder still rumbled far away, like a promise. Antonio, you saved my son once. That's mercy. But mercy always comes with a price. Maria stood up, tears streaming down her cheeks. Maria, what do you want from me? He turned sharply, his eyes dark and burning. Antonio, find her. Bring me Serena Valenti. She blinked in disbelief. Maria, I can't. I don't even know where she is. Antonio, you will. because she'll come for you next. And when she does, you'll lead her to me. Maria's breath caught. Maria, that's suicide. Antonio's expression softened for just a second, a crack in the armor. Antonio, maybe. But if you do this, I'll protect you. You have my word. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't just see a mafia boss. She saw a father, desperate, broken, clinging to the last piece of hope he had. Still, fear gripped her chest. Maria, and if I don't? Antonio's eyes turned cold again. Antonio, then you'll wish you'd never picked up that phone. The silence that followed was long and suffocating. Finally, he turned to leave, but before he stepped out, he paused and said, Antonio, you saved my son out of kindness. But kindness doesn't survive in my world. Prepare yourself, Maria. Tonight, you stop being innocent. Maria sat alone, the folders still open in front of her. The photo of Serena stared back, that same cold smile she tried to forget from childhood dreams. Her mother, a ghost that had come back to destroy everything. Maria whispered to herself, voice shaking. Maria, if you're really out there, Mother, I'll find you before he does. I have to. A shadow shifted outside the window, silent, watching. She didn't see it, but the audience would. A faint whisper echoed through the night air, a woman's voice, cold and soft. Serena voiceover. That's my girl. Brave enough to die for a man who'll never trust her. A faint smirk glimmered in the dark, then vanished into the rain. Inside, Maria wiped her tears, her expression hardening for the first time. The poor girl who once begged for mercy was gone. At the hospital, Antonio sat beside his unconscious son. The heart monitor's steady rhythm was the only sound in the room. He reached for Luca's hand. Antonio, softly, you said she was in danger too. Maybe you were right. His gaze lifted toward the window, lightning flashing briefly across his face. Antonio to himself, mercy has a price, but revenge takes everything. The thunder rolled again, as if answering him. And in that moment, Antonio Moretti, the man feared by half the city, bowed his head for the first time in years. Not in prayer, but in silence. The silence before the war. The ring slowed. The lights dimmed. And somewhere in the distance, a woman's voice whispered a name. Maria. The sun rose harsh and golden, slicing through the gray clouds that had covered the city for days. It was supposed to be a beautiful morning. But it wasn't. Because sometimes, light doesn't bring peace. It exposes everything we've tried to hide. Maria walked alone through the narrow alleyways of the old district, the same place where she had first found Luca lying on the ground. The morning air smelled of dust and regret. Every step echoed in her mind like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. She knew Serena Valenti, her mother, was close, and she knew Antonio Moretti was watching. From a rooftop far above, Antonio's men followed her movements through binoculars. The boss himself stood by a window in a tall black car, his jaw clenched tight. Antonio to himself, if she betrays me, this ends today. He wasn't just watching for Serena. He was watching for truth. Maria entered an old public garden, broken fountains, dead flowers, and a bench half buried in fallen leaves. The place looked forgotten by everyone, except one person. A soft voice echoed from behind her. Serena, you found me, little one. Maria turned sharply. There she was, Serena Valenti, a woman who looked like a ghost carved from sunlight and shadows. Her hair silvered, her eyes sharp and beautiful, but cold, too cold. Maria's heart clenched. Maria, you're real. Serena smiled faintly. Serena, real enough to bleed. For a long, tense moment, neither spoke. Only the rustling of wind through broken branches filled the silence. Maria, why did you hurt him? The boy, Luca. Serena's gaze softened just for a second. Serena, I didn't want to hurt him. I wanted his father to feel what I felt when he burned everything I loved. Maria, you're lying. He said you betrayed him. Serena stepped closer, her heels crunching on gravel. Serena, that's what he told you. That I was the villain. Maria's breathing quickened. Maria, he said you were his fiancée, that you disappeared after his wife died. Serena laughed bitterly. Serena, his wife died. Because of him. Because of his greed. I tried to stop him once, and he silenced me. Took my child. Maria froze. Maria, your child? Serena looked at her, eyes glistening now with something dangerous and sad. Serena, you, Maria. The world stopped. Maria, no, that's not true. Serena stepped closer, her voice trembling but firm. Serena, he took you from me when you were 2. He said a woman like me didn't deserve to raise a child. He gave you a new name and left me for dead. Maria's hands shook violently. The truth cut through her like a blade. Maria, you're lying. You're trying to turn me against him. Serena's voice rose, sharp, trembling, raw. Serena, I came back for you. I bled for you. The poison, the bullets, the chaos, it was all to bring him to his knees, so he'd finally tell you who you are. Maria backed away, tears blurring her vision. Maria, stop. I don't believe you. But deep down, something inside her did. Meanwhile, hidden in the distance, Antonio's voice came through the radio. Antonio quietly, I see them. Hold positions. No one moves until I say. He watched Serena's figure move toward Maria, his hand gripping the gun tightly, though his heart was heavier than any weapon. Antonio to himself, don't do this, Serena. Don't make me finish what we started. Back in the garden, Maria's voice trembled through the wind. Maria, if what you say is true, why hurt Luca? He's innocent. Serena's eyes filled with pain. Serena, because innocence doesn't survive in this world. Not when people like his father rule it. I needed Antonio to suffer, to remember. She took another step closer, gently lifting her hand toward Maria's cheek. Serena, you look just like me. He can't deny it anymore. Maria flinched, but didn't move away. Her mind raced, flashes of her childhood, her strange dreams, her fear of fire, her missing memories. All of it began to fit together. Maria softly, You, you really are my mother. Serena smiled softly through her tears. Serena, yes, my love. And now you know why I came back. For a moment, a brief, fragile moment, they stood there, mother and daughter, under the cruel daylight. But then, the sound of footsteps echoed from the other end of the garden. Maria turned. Antonio already walked into the light, his gun drawn but his eyes filled with something deeper, regret. Antonio. Enough, Serena. Serena didn't flinch. Serena, you finally came into the sun, Antonio. No shadows left to hide behind. He aimed the gun slowly, but his hand shook. Antonio, don't make me do this. Serena, you already did. Years ago. Maria stepped between them suddenly, her voice cracking with desperation. Maria, stop, please, both of you. Antonio's voice thundered. Antonio, move aside, Maria. You don't understand what she's done. Serena's tone softened like silk. Serena, tell her, Antonio. Tell her what you did to me. Antonio's jaw locked. He lowered the gun slightly. Antonio, she betrayed me to my enemies. She gave them everything, names, routes, bloodlines. My wife died that night because of her. Serena's eyes filled with fury. Serena, your wife died because you wouldn't stop. You killed everyone who stood between you and your empire, even your brother. Antonio froze. Maria, shocked what? Serena's voice broke. Serena, yes, Maria. He killed his own blood to protect his power. And then he took you from me, to make sure I'd never rise again. Antonio's eyes flickered, guilt, pain, anger all colliding. Antonio, I did what I had to do to protect you, Maria. You would have been killed with her. Maria's tears spilled. Maria, you both lied to me. The silence that followed felt endless. Even the birds had stopped singing. Suddenly, a shot rang out, echoing across the empty garden. Maria gasped. Serena stumbled backward, clutching her side. Antonio froze, lowering his gun. Antonio. No. Maria ran to her mother's side, kneeling beside her as blood spread across the pale dress. Maria. No. 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 Stay with me. Serena's trembling hand brushed Maria's cheek. Serena. Don't hate him, my love. Hate the world that made him this way. Her voice faded. Her hand fell. Maria screamed, raw, broken, the kind of scream that doesn't echo, it haunts. Antonio fell to his knees a few feet away, the gun slipping from his hand. For the first time in his life, the mafia boss wept. Antonio whispering, I didn't mean to. Maria turned toward him, her face streaked with tears and rage. Maria, you destroyed everything. He didn't deny it. He just stared at the woman he had once loved, now lifeless under the sunlight. Then he said quietly, Antonio, mercy always costs too much. Maria rose slowly, her eyes cold now, her innocence gone. She picked up the gun, the same one that had ended her mother's life. Antonio looked up at her, not afraid, almost welcoming it. Antonio, if this is the price of truth, pay it. Her finger trembled on the trigger. Her tears fell onto the barrel. But she didn't shoot. Instead, she whispered, Maria, no. The truth deserves witnesses, not graves. She dropped the gun beside him, turned, and walked away, leaving him alone under the brutal sun. Epilogue moment YouTube outro scene. Days later. The city was quiet again. Luca, pale but recovering, sat in a wheelchair by the window of the hospital. Maria entered silently. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Luca said softly, Luca, my father's gone. No one knows where. Maria nodded. Maria, sometimes. The guilty punish themselves. Luca looked at her, his voice trembling. Luca, what about you? She smiled faintly through her tears. Maria, I'll live, but I'll never forget. The truth always burns under the sun. The camera would slowly pull back, showing the sunlight spilling over the hospital room, warm yet merciless. Maria's voice would fade over the final frame. Maria voiceover, when I picked up that phone to call the mafia boss, I thought I was saving a boy. I didn't know. I was calling my past.